"I've had enough, Nathan. I want a divorce." The words tumbled from my mouth, heavy with a mixture of fear and resolution. Nathan, my husband of 6 years, stared at me, his face a blend of disbelief and anger. "What are you talking about, Eliza? This is ridiculous," he exclaimed, his voice rising in frustration. I took a step back, feeling the weight of years of unspoken grievances pressing down on me. "This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I've thought this through," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Nathan scoffed and crossed his arms. "You'll change your mind. You always do." But this time was different. I wouldn't change my mind. The endless cycle of neglect, his dismissive attitude towards my career as an interior designer, and the stifling loneliness that had crept into our marriage were suffocating me. It was time for a change. I had a business trip scheduled that day, a brief escape to another state for a project that demanded my expertise. Time was not on my side, and Nathan's unwillingness to have a constructive conversation only cemented my decision. I grabbed my suitcase, giving him one last look, a mix of sorrow and determination in my eyes. "I really mean it, Nathan. I'm done." His response was a cold, harsh laugh as he turned away, dismissing my words and me along with them. I left the house, the sound of the slamming door echoing my tumultuous emotions. The business trip was a blur. Meetings, presentations, and polite conversations with clients filled my days, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the scene with Nathan over and over. I felt a strange blend of liberation and fear. Was I ready for the unknown that lay ahead? Returning home the next day, the house was silent, almost reflective of the void in my heart. "I'm back," I called out, but there was no response. On the dining table lay a business card, a divorce lawyer's. Nathan had made his move, quicker than I had anticipated. I picked up the card, my fingers tracing the embossed letters. Nathan's quick decision surprised me, but in a way, it was a relief. Maybe he too realized that our marriage was beyond repair. Maybe this was for the best. Resolute, I dialed the number on the card. It was time to close this chapter of my life and begin anew. As I waited for the call to connect, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new one. My story, on my terms. As I sat in my home office, the echoes of my conversation with the divorce lawyer still lingered in my mind. The room, once a sanctuary where I sketched and imagined beautiful spaces, now felt like a capsule of my failed marriage. I let my gaze drift across the room, landing on the framed photos of Nathan and me. Our smiles in those pictures seemed to belong to strangers. It's hard to believe that just 6 years ago, Nathan and I were the quintessential happy couple. We met at a mutual friend's art exhibit. He was charming, with a quick wit that matched my own. Our shared love for art and design drew us together. We would spend hours discussing the latest trends in interior design, often debating over styles and aesthetics. When Nathan proposed, it felt like a fairy tale. We dreamt of building a life together, filled with love, shared ambitions, and eventually a family. However, reality painted a starkly different picture. Nathan's true colors began to show soon after our wedding. Initially, his comments were subtle, a jest about my job as an interior designer being just a hobby, or a passing remark about how a wife should prioritize home over career. But gradually his words grew sharper, his attitude more dismissive. The change in our relationship wasn't just emotional, but also practical. We had agreed to share household responsibilities, but soon all the tasks fell on my shoulders. Nathan would come home from his job at the architectural firm and immediately retreat to his study, leaving me to juggle my work deadlines and household chores alone. I tried to talk to him, to remind him of the partnership we had promised each other. But each conversation ended in an argument, with Nathan declaring that housework wasn't his job. As I reflected on these moments, a sense of clarity began to dawn on me. I had been living in a facade, a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but was crumbling within. I wasn't just fighting for a divorce. I was fighting for my self-respect. It was then that I made a promise to myself. No longer would I be the Eliza who nodded and smiled, suppressing her own needs and desires. It was time to rebuild, not just my life, but also my identity. An identity not defined by Nathan or our failed marriage, but by my own strengths and passions. As I stood up from my desk, a newfound determination filled me. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it head on. I was ready to rediscover the Eliza who dreamed of creating beauty in the world, one space at a time. The days following my decision to divorce Nathan were a whirlwind of emotions and legal consultations. But amidst this chaos, I discovered something that turned my world upside down. Nathan was having an affair. I stumbled upon this revelation one evening while working late on a project. My phone buzzed with a notification from a social media platform, a tag and a photo from a user I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued. I opened the app, and there it was, a photo that felt like a punch to the gut. Nathan, arm in arm with a younger woman, smiling as if he hadn't a care in the world. The woman, Bella Harper, was an influencer known for her glamorous lifestyle posts. Anger and disbelief coursed through me as I scrolled through Bella's profile. There were more photos, subtle hints of their relationship hidden in plain sight. A picture at a restaurant with 2 wine glasses, a shot of a man's hand, Nathan's hand I recognized, holding hers. Each post was a breadcrumb leading to the painful truth of Nathan's betrayal. The pain of the discovery was sharp, but it also brought a strange sense of clarity. Nathan's late nights at the office, the weekends he was out with clients, they all made sense now. He wasn't just neglecting me, he had replaced me. I sat there, in the dim light of my office, feeling a mix of sadness and liberation. Sadness for the love I thought we had, and liberation from the lies I had been living. It was clear now, Nathan's affair wasn't just a fling. It was a deliberate choice, a choice that showed me where I stood in his life. But amidst the storm of emotions, a plan began to form in my mind. Nathan had underestimated me, thought me weak and compliant. He was wrong. I was an interior designer, a creator of spaces that told stories. And now it was time to rewrite my own story, one where I wasn't a victim but the architect of my own future. I spent the night poring over Bella's social media, gathering evidence. I needed to be prepared for the legal battles ahead. But more importantly, I needed closure. I needed to confront Nathan, not as the betrayed wife, but as a woman reclaiming her power. The next morning, I called my lawyer, my voice steady and resolute. "I have something that might interest you," I said, explaining my discovery. "It's time to set the record straight. It's time for Nathan to face the consequences of his actions." The revelation of Nathan's affair with Bella Harper changed everything. It was not just a betrayal. It was a mockery of the vows we had once taken so earnestly. The pain was deep, but it ignited a fire within me, a resolve to stand up for myself and reclaim my life. In the following weeks, I threw myself into my work with a renewed vigor, channeling my emotions into creativity. My designs were bolder, my concepts more daring. It was as if by freeing myself from Nathan's shadow, I had unleashed a part of me that was long suppressed. But the reality of my personal life couldn't be ignored. The divorce proceedings were underway, and with each meeting with my lawyer, I felt a step closer to freedom. I gathered all the evidence of Nathan's affair, preparing myself for the battles ahead. One evening, as I sat reviewing legal documents, Nathan walked in, his demeanor a strange mix of defiance and guilt. "So, you're really going through with this, huh?" he asked, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Yes, Nathan, I am," I replied calmly, without looking up from the papers. He let out a scoff. "You think you'll be better off without me? You think you can just throw away our marriage like it's nothing?" "Our marriage ended the moment you decided to be with someone else, Nathan," I said, finally looking at him. "I'm not throwing away anything. I'm just picking up the pieces of what you broke." Nathan's face hardened. "You'll regret this, Eliza. You're making a mistake." "No, Nathan. The mistake was thinking you would change, but I'm correcting that mistake now." He didn't respond, just turned and left the room, his silence more telling than words. The day of the final hearing arrived quicker than I had anticipated. Standing before the judge, I felt an odd sense of peace. This was it, the moment of truth. Nathan and I presented our cases, the evidence of his affair leaving him with little to defend. The judge's gavel sounded like a bell of liberation when the divorce was finalized. I walked out of the courtroom, a free woman. But this was not just a legal victory. It was a personal triumph. I had stood up against the injustice and disrespect that had colored my marriage. As I stepped outside, the sun seemed brighter, the air fresher. I was no longer Eliza, Nathan's wife. I was Eliza Bennett, a woman who had reclaimed her life, her identity. But this was just the beginning. The next chapter of my life was waiting to be written, and I was ready to be its author. The finality of the divorce brought a sense of closure, but it also opened a new chapter of confrontations and revelations. It was time to face Nathan and his mistress, Bella Harper, in a way they never expected. I continued to live in the same house with Nathan until everything was settled. Our interactions were minimal, cold, and strictly necessary. He had already started to bring Bella around, flaunting his new relationship in a way that seemed designed to provoke me. But I refused to give him that satisfaction. I was planning, waiting for the right moment to make my move. One evening, as I sat in my studio surrounded by my designs, I heard them laughing in the living room. Something about their carefree joy struck a nerve. It was a stark reminder of the life Nathan had shattered. My hands clenched into fists, not out of anger, but determination. It was time to act. The following day, I contacted my lawyer and initiated the final phase of my plan. "It's time to make them understand the consequences of their actions," I said with a resolve that surprised even me. The opportunity presented itself one weekend when Nathan announced that he was taking Bella on a trip. "We'll be gone for the whole weekend," he said, a smug smile on his face. "Enjoy your trip," I replied, my voice steady, giving nothing away. As soon as they left, I swung into action. I had already arranged for a moving company to come. Piece by piece, my belongings, everything I had brought into this house, everything that was mine, were carefully packed and removed. But I didn't stop there. I took everything that represented the life Nathan and I had built together, the furniture we had chosen, the art we had collected, the memories we had created. All of it, gone. When Nathan returned, he walked into an empty house. The shock on his face was palpable. "What have you done?" he stammered, looking around at the barren walls and empty spaces. "I did what I had to do," I said calmly. "I removed everything that was mine, everything that I contributed to this house." "This is insane, Eliza. You've taken everything." "Not everything, Nathan. Just what was rightfully mine. You wanted a new life with Bella, remember? I'm just helping you start from scratch." He looked around, defeated and bewildered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes, but it was too late for regrets. As I turned to leave, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had taken back control of my life, piece by piece. Nathan and Bella were left to deal with the empty shell of a home, a fitting metaphor for the hollowness of their betrayal. The days following the great exodus of my possessions from the house were filled with a mix of liberation and reflection. I had taken a decisive step, one that was both empowering and symbolic. It was more than just reclaiming my belongings. It was about asserting my independence from a relationship that had long ceased to be a partnership. I had moved into a small, cozy apartment, a blank canvas that awaited my personal touch. It was in this new space, free from the shadows of the past, that I began to truly process everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Nathan and Bella faced the reality of their choices. The empty house was a constant reminder of the life that had been uprooted. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Nathan was struggling to come to terms with the changes. Bella, on the other hand, seemed more concerned with the loss of the material comforts than the relationship itself. It was during this time that I received an unexpected call. Nathan. His voice was a mix of anger and desperation. "Eliza, you've gone too far. You've taken everything. How could you?" I listened, a calmness enveloping me. "Nathan, I only took what belonged to me. You wanted a fresh start, remember? I'm just helping you with that. You've left us with nothing." His voice cracked, a sign of his fraying composure. "Nathan, you made your choices. Now you live with them. Bella wanted a life with you, and now she has it, just not the way she imagined." There was a pause, and for a moment I thought he had hung up. Then, quietly, he said, "I didn't think you'd actually do it. Sometimes, Nathan, we don't really know people until we see them in a new light." The call ended, leaving a profound silence in its wake. It was a conversation that marked the end of an era. I had spoken not with bitterness, but with the clarity of someone who had closed a painful chapter of her life. As days turned into weeks, I immersed myself in my work and the decoration of my new apartment. The creative process was therapeutic, each design choice a step towards rebuilding myself. I was rediscovering the passions and dreams I had before Nathan, reconnecting with the essence of who I was. One evening, as I sat on my new balcony, a sense of peace washed over me. The city lights twinkled in the distance, each a reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. I had endured the storm and emerged stronger. In that moment, I knew that the tide had truly turned. I had moved beyond the pain and betrayal. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. In the months that followed, my life took on a rhythm of renewal and self-discovery. My new apartment became a sanctuary, a place where I could be myself without the shadows of a strained marriage. Meanwhile, the repercussions of my decisive actions were unfolding in ways I hadn't anticipated. Word reached me about Nathan and Bella's struggles. The luxurious life Bella had flaunted on social media had diminished significantly, her posts now a stark contrast to the opulence she once displayed. Nathan, on the other hand, seemed lost, his professional life suffering as he grappled with the personal upheaval. One day, as I sat in a cafe sketching designs for a client, I noticed Nathan walk in. He looked different. There was a weariness about him that I hadn't seen before. Our eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting moment, I saw a mix of regret and resignation. He approached me hesitantly. "Eliza, can we talk?" he asked, his voice lacking its former confidence. I nodded, setting aside my sketches. The conversation that ensued was a surreal experience. Nathan spoke of his regrets, of how he had underestimated me and the life we had. He talked about Bella, about how their relationship was nothing more than a facade, a superficial connection that paled in comparison to what we had. I listened, not with satisfaction but with a sense of closure. "Nathan, we both made choices," I said calmly. "You chose a path, and I chose mine. We can't undo the past, but we can learn from it." As Nathan left the cafe, I felt a final thread of our connection sever. It was an unspoken goodbye, a mutual acknowledgement that our chapter was closed. Emboldened by these events, I dove deeper into my career. My designs gained recognition, leading to more prestigious projects. I also reconnected with old friends and even made new ones. Life was busy, but it was a fulfilling kind of busy, one that brought a sense of accomplishment and joy. One evening, as I reviewed my latest project, I received a call from an old colleague, Mark, who had always been a supportive friend. He proposed a collaboration on an exciting new venture. It was an opportunity to stretch my creative muscles and be part of something innovative and challenging. As I mulled over Mark's proposal, I realized how far I had come. The pain and betrayal that once defined my days were now just faint echoes of a past life. In their place was a strong, confident woman who had taken charge of her destiny. I picked up the phone and called Mark. "I'm in," I said, a smile spreading across my face. It was time for new adventures, new challenges, and new stories to tell. Months had passed since my last encounter with Nathan, and my life had taken on a new, vibrant rhythm. The collaboration with Mark had been a resounding success, bringing both of us acclaim in the design world. My days were filled with creativity and purpose, a far cry from the uncertainty that had once clouded my life. But it wasn't just my professional life that had flourished. I had found a sense of peace and contentment in my personal life as well. My apartment was now a reflection of my journey. Every piece of furniture, every artwork told a story of resilience and rebirth. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, a soft breeze playing with my hair, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The journey from the turmoil of my marriage to where I was now had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had also been a journey of immense growth and self-discovery. I thought about Nathan and how our paths had diverged. I harbored no ill will towards him. Instead, I hoped he found the growth and peace he needed. As for Bella, I wished her well in her own journey of self-discovery. The phone rang, pulling me out of my reverie. It was an invitation to speak at a renowned design conference, an opportunity to share my journey and insights with others. I accepted with a sense of excitement and humility. As I prepared for the conference, I realized that my story was not just about the end of a marriage or the pain of betrayal. It was about the power of resilience, the beauty of starting over, and the importance of staying true to oneself. Standing on the stage at the conference, I looked out at the audience, a sea of eager faces, each on their own journey. I began to speak, not just as a designer, but as a woman who had navigated the depths of despair and emerged stronger. I stand before you today not just as a designer, but as someone who believes in the power of transformation, I began. Every space I design tells a story, and so does every moment of our lives. We have the power to redefine our spaces, our stories, and ultimately ourselves. The applause at the end of my talk was not just an acknowledgement of my words, but a celebration of the journey I had shared. As I left the stage, a sense of fulfillment washed over me. I had not only rebuilt my life, but had also found a way to inspire others with my story. Life, much like design, is about creating beauty from chaos, order from disorder, and joy from pain. And as I continued on my path, I carried with me the lessons of my past, a past that had shaped me but no longer defined me.